right, let's go for something that we know is going to be disappointing. This is Nero by Phalanx Games. Really poorly rated game. And so, the last two that I've done down here, Wild Blue Yonder, which, I love the Down in Flames dogfighting situation. The campaigns were so badly presented that they just weren't worth the effort, especially playing solo. And something I think I forgot to bring up in the review itself. I mentioned it in the comments for that game. It's a very hard game to get the campaign working correctly, because normally you've got like a bunch of people playing in the dogfights. You'll have maybe two on a side or more. And when you get to the campaigns, you don't know how many different sections and whatnot you're going to have. So it's like really hard to coordinate having the right number of players during the campaign. But anyway, that's besides the point. And then Dallas, which was a game that I've always had severe suspicions about that it's just not going to work, right? And I feel like I'm less optimistic about it now than I've ever been before. And that's why I bailed on that early. We might finish this one, but this is like one of the really lousy rated games. It's not among the worst in BGG, but it's got a really crappy rating. And everything I've read about it, everything I've seen is just, it's an awful game. Yet, there was a new and shrink copy of it at my local gaming store back when I used to go there. And they sold used games, kind of like a consignment shop. There were regular events where they did kind of like a flea market type thing where people brought in their games and then they'd sell them for you and you'd get store credit for it, whatever. And this was only $5. Now, I would not pay shipping on this, right? But $5 for something that I could carry home. And I know that Phalanx puts out good components. And again, they don't disappoint here. But I kind of knew that the underlying game wasn't going to be very good. So I had it, sitting in shrink on my shelving for quite some time. And I decided I'd bust it open because I had a couple of disappointments, and why don't we continue the streak, right? Especially since I'm looking for kind of smaller things to play while I'm doing DAC that I can do down here. This might be a little longer than I want, but so were the others, honestly. So everything's a little longer than I want, except some really tiny Euros and stuff. But upon reading the rules, first of all, there are problems with the rules, but also, oh man, it's so clear that that the game is not going to work, and the game is not going to be all terribly interesting. But there are also even just problems with the rules. So we're going to go over them, but let me talk a little bit about what you have. This is meant to represent the year of 4 emperors after Nero's death. And you've actually got the emperors who were in the running named in the game, each with their own color mix, which corresponds to a color mix on the board, more or less. And we'll get to that a little later, because blue being where it is it's not clear that that's where it actually belongs, but it doesn't really matter. In terms of the historicity of, placing these generals where they are, that is not correct. Otho, for example, did not have any legions, basically. He was senatorial, who was raised to the rank of emperor for no good reason. The Praetorians thought they could control him. Galbo over here, who appears to be... they don't have this divided up the way things would have been divided up, but worse than that, Germania is part of his provinces. Germania was never part of Rome, which is problematic. But Galba, and I had him down here because that felt a little closer, historically was in Hispania. That's where he made his name. And his troops loved him and raised him up, calling on him to be emperor. We've got Vespasian here, and this is the Flavian dynasty, which historically was here, but they've got him in red and kind of putting him in Macedonia and whatnot. Did he have the whole of the East? I mean, at the very least, he was in charge of the Jewish revolt, and that's where he made his name before pushing for the emperorship. And then Vitellius, I don't remember where he was. But there's at least one other major contender at this time. These are the four who made it to emperor, but Otho had no troops. So, like, that all feels kind of weird, whatever. All right. It's got a very Euro look to it. Sort of a hybrid type of situation. Now, it gives credit to Mark Herman for the system, and it is sort of a CDG system. You'll see these cards are not quite CDG looking, but it's basically that they have an event on them that is expressed as an image instead of words. But the events are repeating. They don't have a lot of historical, grounding. They don't have text or whatever. And you really have like multiple things you can do with every card. Okay. One is movement. One is combat value that you can just toss into combat. And then one is playing for the event. And then this tells you who can play the card, or when you can play the card, basically. Whether during your own turn, which is these guys, or on anybody's turn, which is the multicolor ones. That's just for the events. The movement and the combat can be played at any time you like. The actual quality of the cards, I'm a little unhappy about. They're flexible. After a while, Blue Yonder, I'm real happy about that. But I did notice that they scar a little quickly. Like opening the package, my thumbnail kind of scraped one of them and damaged the backing of it. And it's not a big deal, but, it's still way above the kind of cards that were in games for the most part, except for things like Risk. The rest of it is top-notch in terms of quality. There are no dice in the game. Why do I have dice here? I don't know. Decision-making, whatever. The different pieces, what do they represent? Well, these are legions. These are your leader, which comes in 3 different flavors. A general, a contender, I guess sort of an imperator, and then finally the emperor himself. There's 28 legions always on the board, whatever. And then there's these which are control markers, which technically the rules indicate that you'd be placing in every province, but also you could control of full areas, which are a collection of 5 provinces. Somewhere in the rules it says there's always 28 legions on the board. Basically, they don't disappear. I may be missing something. Maybe there should be some here. Let me see. No, I haven't set them all up yet. So you set up initially with 5 in each of your provinces. Oh, with 5, 1 in each province. And then you have 2 additional to place along with your emperor. And we'll talk about how this all works. For the game map itself, pretty simple. It might be a little hard to see some of this stuff, but it's pretty easy to distinguish if you kind of focus and look and think about it. You have these crossing arrow type things for being able to get between land masses. Notably, not in any area, there's 2 provinces in Italy, and then there's Rome, which is not a province at all, but operates similar to one in some ways. Okay. There are always 28. Some of them may be uncontrolled legions. Well, what are uncontrolled legions? They give you a few uncontrolled legions here. They give you these, which are used for withdrawing forces. And then they give you this, which I don't know what it's for. It's not spelled out over here in this list. And I did not see anywhere where it's talked about at all. But maybe I'll run into something where that particular piece gets used for something special. Maybe it's meant to be like, I don't know. Emperors get a couple extra points in combat, so maybe it's meant to replace them somehow. I don't know. All right. Or it may be an artifact of a game that was maybe more ambitious and more interesting, but was failing to work, and so they like pared things back. I really don't know. I'm not familiar with the designer, Alexander Berg, and I don't think he's a relative of Richard, but not sure. None of the names in the playtest are at all familiar to me. Credits to Mark Herman. Okay. So at the beginning of the game, each player gets to select one of the color groups. And by the way, in terms of play, it doesn't matter at all the fact that like blue is over here in this color. But it is kind of interesting what they talked about out there. The game will hold 3 or 4 players. In 3 players, an area is left out. Maybe this area. Yeah, the problem is this stuff is part of a military area. And it would probably normally be combined with Dalmatia. I don't know. I don't know exactly what the divisions were. I mean, first of all, these areas are way too large. Like I said, Galba was in Hispania. Somebody else had Gaul. Perhaps the 2 Gauls were split between different governors. Somebody else was in Britannia at this point. You know, it wasn't like, we'll support Galba because we're in the West. It didn't work that simply. But anyway. At the beginning of the game, the legions are placed as I've got them, and then each player will get to choose where to place their 2 additional and their leader, which can be in different places within their territory or all in one place or whatever. Okay. And this is done starting with the youngest player, which feels a little weird. Like, some games just sort of give you this random, you know, like once upon a time, the person with the longest beard gets to start. And where going first isn't necessarily an advantage or disadvantage, here it feels like being forced to set up first is definitely a disadvantage. Now, kind of depends on, you know, what group you're with. At my age, I used to be smarter than I am now. So I'm kind of okay with the youngest player having to place first, but this is also not that complex a game. I could see groups where, you know, there's like a 9 or 10-year-old playing this, and you probably don't want to force them to have to go first in terms of their placement, particularly. I don't know. They may be less likely to get certain advantages. Then each player is going to be given 10 cards face down. I haven't done that, but I'll shuffle those up again and deal them out as we go. Your cards are held secret in your hand. There's a shorter version of the game where you deal out less cards. Play is ready to begin. The youngest player then starts the first turn. The player who goes first in each successive game turn will change from turn to turn, based on the victory positioning. There's diplomacy allowed throughout the game, but there's no special rules for it. Whatever you know, you're allowed to table talk is basically what it comes down to. There are games which don't you know, there are groups which don't seem to think that you should allow any kind of table talk or discussion unless it's like specifically allowed in the rules. There are others where it's just the assumption. I'm more in the latter camp, but I'm okay with them spelling it out. But basically, whatever you do, it's not binding. You have to, at the moment at which something may have an impact, you have to either follow through or not, and there you have it, right? Again, 3 players, you get more cards, you eliminate an area. Eliminating a player, yeah, great. There's a rule for it. It's not allowed. It doesn't happen. Cool. You can lose all your legions, you still get to keep playing because you might get something else. All right, the goal of the game, get victory points. This is the very Euro part. You're going to collect up victory points mainly at the end of turns. But you also get it for winning battles under the command of an emperor, if you've been made emperor. The game is going to consist of 4 game turns, which is why this is here. Each one will have player rounds, wherein each player can play up to 4 of their cards from their hand. They're limited. There's no... So, like, in most CDGs, you play 1 card, right? And then the next player plays 1 card. And you do it for, you know, whatever you want off the card, legally. In this one... But in most of them, if there's events or something like that, well, there are certain kinds of events for battles and whatnot that you're allowed to just play kind of whenever it's applicable to play them. Well, this one's a little different. This one, you're limited to 4 cards during your turn. And that can be events, that can be movement, that can be combat bonuses, which kind of feel like, you know, there are certain, like, you know, play during battle events and stuff like that that show up in a lot of CDGs. Okay. And then each player clockwise, I'll be going, of course, counterclockwise, because that's what I do. The next player conducts a player round until no player has any cards left. So over the course of a turn, you're going to play out your entire hand of 10 cards, but you're only allowed to play 4 at a time. Well, 4 in each turn. You can play less than 4, but you must play at least 1, which could be a discard. Okay. So the players determine who goes first in a game turn. In the first game turn, like I said, youngest player goes first. In the remaining 3, the order of play is the victory points. The person with the least victory points goes first. Again, I feel like going first probably is not an advantage. So I don't think this is like some kind of major... It's certainly not a major catch-up mechanism. It may be a catch-up mechanism. We'll see how it plays out, because in some games going early can give you a benefit because you can conquer things off of other players and whatnot. Then you deal the cards. First you reshuffle the deck, and 10 cards to each player, or more, or less. And then each player takes their player rounds. If only one player has cards left, and he has more than 4, he can only play 4 cards on his last action. And then the turn ends. So if everybody else is playing all their cards and you're trying to sandbag and hold back cards, you might find that you don't get to do as much over the course of the turn, because, you know, let's say you have 6 cards in your hand and everybody else has run out. Well, you're going to burn 2 cards. What it doesn't say, I believe, is what happens to that player's extra cards. I'm assuming they're just discarded and they get dealt a new hand of 10, but it's not spelled out in the rules. Okay. Then, and if there's any withdrawn markers, which are these guys over here, they get pulled off the board without any penalty. And then victory points are tallied for that turn, and then you go to the next turn. I gotta swap batteries. and then we'll talk about what a player can do in their turn. During your own player turn, there's a few things you can do with your cards. You can play a card to move your legions and leader. Using one or more cards for movement as part of movement, you may attack enemy legions. Battle will be part of the movement. And there's a little bit of complexity there. You can use the cards. Okay, and that's this. You'd get 6 movement points to spend. I'll explain how they work, but you can use the cards during a battle to add to your strength as to whether or not you're going to win the battle. Or you can fire off the event on the card. Now these events are all pictorial, and as you can see, there's a fair number of them. And I'm not really familiar with them all. I'll just read them. I find the choice of using images, look, I understand why they did it. To be able to print rules in different languages, but not have to spend the money on printing different decks of cards for different languages. But I much prefer something that tells me what the card does on here. Of course, there's a fair amount of complexity on each card in terms of description of what it does. So it's a little bit more painful than maybe you could fit on the text of the card. Okay. Those can be done in any order the player wishes, going back and forth between possibilities and restricted only by rules limitation. You can also discard cards. Now, you probably wouldn't do this unless you don't want to use a card for any of its activities. Again, that seems unlikely, but what you do is you just drop the card face down into the pile of unused cards. It'll be reshuffled in for the next turn, and you know, it's your way of, if you're in the perfect position and you don't want to fire off any events or anything at this time, whatever, yeah, okay, throw a card, whatever. And that might be useful at times. I don't know. Okay. If a player's general or contender is in Rome, he may attempt to declare himself emperor. This can be done at any time during a player's round within the rules. You can only use 4 cards. All right, for movement. You can play cards to generate movement points. This allows you to move your legions separately or together. When several legions are moved together from one province to the next, this is called an army. The cost of moving an individual legion or several together as an army from one province to the next is the same. Legions and armies move from one province to another as follows: across a common border into an adjacent province, okay, or using one of these naval passages. Fine. And we've got examples for all of that. There's a galley fleet event. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, that looks like this. It's got boats on it. This will allow you to move up to 3 legions and their leader and a leader. I assume that in all these cases you do not need a leader with you for various reasons. But from one port province to another port province, little anchors. There aren't not every province is a port. Like all these provinces, I think are, not all of them. A lot of them are adjacent to water. Not many of them are actually ports. In fact, it looks to me like all the ports are on the Med, and all the Mediterranean locations are ports. How about that? Makes sense. The Romans did not have a lot of shipping capacity in the Atlantic or, well, the Black Sea they certainly didn't have a problem with, but we don't have ports along here. I know this is a port. Okay. Legions that, now things start getting weird. Legions that start movement in the same province may move as if they were one unit, fine. They may also move separately, but the movement points available are applied to each army, legion or army, separately. Okay. So if I have like 3 units in one location, I could play this card and get 6 movement points and use that to move this guy 6, to move this guy 6, and maybe move this guy 6 as well. Okay, that's weird. A legion or army may pick up additional legions as it moves by paying the cost to do so. That is going to be a cost of 1 extra movement point to pick up your own legions, and 2 extra movement points to pick up an uncontrolled legion and turn it to your own. Starting to get really weird, right? Like, if I wanted to fork my movement, I could actually pick up. So, this setup doesn't really make a lot of sense. But let's say I have this. I can move this 1, 2, 3, 4, say 5 into there, and this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 into there, all off 1 card. It seems pretty damn extreme to me. But there you have it. Okay. You may leave legions behind as you move at no cost, but units that are left behind as it moves, that are left behind may not move any further in that player round. Wow, that's again weird. So, while if I had this, I could send 1 unit up this way and 1 unit maybe down this way. If I pick up a unit, move here, and leave this behind, he can't then split off. Okay. It's all a little odd. No other army or individual legion may move until the legion or army that is moving has finished its movement. Okay? Whatever that means. And any attacks. Once a legion or army stops, attacking is not necessarily stopping, it is finished and its units may not move any further during that player round. So, if you start using movement points on one group of units, you continue using movement points with that group of units until you are done moving that group of units, and then you can't pick them up. You can't go back and use movement points from either that card or another one later in the same round. You can in another round of the same turn. Each card gives movement points, a number in the top left corner. You can play multiple cards to total the movement points, or play 1 card and use its movement points to move a legion army, then play another card to move another legion army. Okay, they're being like, they're making this sound like it's really specific, like a card applies to 1 legion or army. I don't think that's the case. But I don't know. Right? Like, what was said over here seems to indicate something else. The movement points may be divided among more than 1 legion or army. No. Yeah. But the movement points from any 1 card are applicable only to those legions in 1 province. Aha! Okay. So this is really fucking weird. Like, they're going around in circles with the words, and can I come up with a meaning that doesn't that has no conflicts in it? Yeah, probably. But it could have been expressed a hell of a lot easier than they're going here. The movement points from a single card may not be split among different provinces. So, okay, the movement points. So here they're talking about each card. They go blah, blah, blah about things. The movement points may be divided among more than 1 legion or army. That doesn't really seem to fit what I've got here. So here they say they may also move separately, but the movement points available are applied to each legion or army separately. what I showed as an example was what I got from that, which is that I get 6 movement points. Everybody in that province gets 6 movement points. This seems to contradict that. I think to say things explicitly, like if I wanted to get it so that all the words work, I'm not sure I can go with that contradiction. But then it's hard to say the movement points may be divided among more than one legion or army. Again, I don't know what they intend. I think probably the wisest is to say, look, if I want to split a stack within a single province, I have to assign the movement points to the stack that's moving. So I can't do that kind of tricky. One of the trickinesses I was thinking about was that you could move. So let's say you had here, was that you could move with my 6 movement points, 1, 2, pick this up, 3, 4, pick this up, 5 into here, and then do the same here. Let's get rid of that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 into here, and that a single 5-point card would allow me to do that. That's kind of what this seems to imply. And then I've combined all these units into one huge stack, and I think instead the intention would be, let's say I have 6 movement points or whatever. I could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I've got 1 movement point left for the rest of these to split as I wish. It is definitely worded more poorly than it could be. But I think that's what they're trying to do. I just don't think the words support it. Huh. Thank you. Wasn't. If I can't see it, I don't know that it's flashing, and I've had issues. All right. Now they give a bunch of examples to try to explain this. Card provides 5 movement points. That player may use these to move all legions as a unit, or he may split the army up and move individual legions in different directions. In this case, he can spend movement points for each separate legion or army. That doesn't answer the question. Another example, a card provides 4 movement points. It is not possible to first move an army in one province with 2 movement points, then move an army in a different province with the remaining 2. Okay, that's fine. I'm only allowed to use the points from one card in one province. We know that. That was clear. We don't need that. So the 2 examples don't get to the heart of the ambiguity that's present at all. Then there's a play note. When playing more than one card to total movement points to move one army, all such cards must be played at the same time, not one after the other. This is important because you have to play the movement points before you move the units, and moving the units will cause battles, so you might have wanted to add movement points to the legion after you see that the battle's been won. You can't do that. You have to assign all the movement points ahead of time. Fine. A legion or army does not have to use all the movement points it is given. However, movement points not used may not be saved for another round. Okay. All right. Each time a legion or army attacks and wins, it can continue to move if it still has movement points. However, the cost of every battle after the first will increase by 1 movement point. The cost of picking up other legions remains unchanged. This rule does not apply to the leader piece, which is never fatigued. An army that has fought and won 2 battles would, if it wanted to continue to move and fight, pay 3 movement points to enter an adjacent province, 1 normal movement point plus 2 battle fatigue points, or 3 movement points to attack another enemy in the same province. But, however, the cost of every battle after the first. So it sounds like you only pay this penalty if you're entering a space to fight, or if you're fighting another stack in the same space. I guess. I gotta do another battery swap. These are burning out fast. This camera eats battery. Okay, well, this battery was not charged, and this one's not charging. Oh. It saw me coming and it feared me. Oh, it saw me going away. There's something about me like hurting these. I don't remember how I threatened them properly. Okay, this is gonna run out very, very shortly. Just been having, and there, that fucker. Gonna eke out a tiny bit more from this. Picking up and dropping off legions and armies during movement. A legion or army and or leader may move into a new province and add a legion to the friendly force. It costs 1 extra movement point to pick up an already controlled legion. I think that's per legion. And 2 extra if the legion you want to pick up is uncontrolled. This will bring it under your control, in which case you get a legion of your color to replace. Legions become uncontrolled only by play of rebellious legion or revolting province events. Let's see the picture of those, because we're going to really be able to remember these by what they look like. So, I don't know. And my battery's not working there. And revolting province looks like that, but it specifies the color of the province that is actually revolting. There's only 4 provinces in the game that can revolt. But I would not want to be in a revolting province. I want to be in a nice, comfortable one. Right, after beating up my battery a little bit more. You may never pick up enemy legions. The above cost is applied regardless of the number of legions being so picked up. So it's not per. Okay? If you want to pick up both a friendly and an uncontrolled legions in a province, though, you have to pay 3. 1 for the friendly and 2 for the uncontrolled. The legions just pick up. Use the movement points of the legion or army that picked them up. However, the legions or armies may not pick up pieces that have already moved without play around. Hey, there's a no leapfrogging rule in this one. A moving army may always drop off legions in a province, leaving them behind. There's no extra cost, but the dropped off units, we already hit that. Now we get more example. An army of 3 starts in Egypt. A 4 movement point card is played. The army moves into Judea. It's still not handling that. How do you handle 2 different armies in the same area and splitting the movement points? Army moves into Judea Judea at a cost of 1 movement point. Where there's another legion controlled by that player, 1 is used to add to that legion, giving the player 4 legions total. Now using the 2 remaining, the army is moved first into Syria, then into Asia Minor. Wow. Yeah, we really needed an example for that. You know, I don't like rules by example, but I do think that, like, the examples should handle the, yeah, we didn't explain this very well situation if possible. And now this one's out of battery. Let's see if I got more power. And this is my last battery remaining, but it appears to be juiced. Of course, I ran through 2 juiced ones already. Moving into an enemy-occupied province. Legions or armies from different players may coexist in the same provinces. Legions and armies may enter a province occupied by other legions and armies. Friendly, enemy, uncontrolled. However, they must end their movement for that player round if the province is occupied by enemy legions, unless one of the following takes place. The moving legion or army attacks the non-moving legion or armies, all of them, and wins. It may then continue to move if it has movement points remaining. The non-moving player or players allow the moving or legionary army to move through them. This will cost the moving player's legion or army 1 extra movement point. I'll be back. Wants to be more comfortable over here. There's no guarantee though, and I can't see that. And it's fucked. Okay. If there are legions of more than 1 player in a province, the moving legion or army may either stop or defeat all of them or get permission to continue moving from all of them. I would suggest there's probably the right to do a combination of those 2. And then they give an example of this. And I've given up on reading examples. In a later player round, a legion or army may leave a province that is occupied by enemy legions without permission and without paying an extra movement point if it's moving into a province that once more is occupied by an enemy legion or army. The above rules take effect. Okay, this is confusing, but I think what they mean is when you enter that new province, the rules take effect, not they take effect before you enter that new province, which would kind of feel like it's what you'd have to clarify, but again, not well spelled out. But there's an example here. Moves a legion from Thracia to Dalmatia, occupied by 3 of Marcus. Peter does not want to attack and does not get permission to continue movement, therefore he has to stop. The next player around, Peter moves his legion from Dalmatia to northern Italy. Marcus cannot prevent this. No, they don't handle the ambiguity they have once again set up. It's really amazing how effectively they set up an ambiguity and then deliberately design an example that fails to address it. Withdrawal. Non-moving legions may withdraw in reaction to an enemy movement into the province they're in, moving into any adjacent province that has no enemy legion in it or is occupied only by its own legions. If it's occupied by only its own legions, it has no enemy legions in it. Did not need both. Okay, keep going. Players may use naval passage to withdraw, but not a galley fleet event. Okay. A legion or army may not withdraw into a province from which the moving legion or army just came. It is allowed to withdraw into a province that is only occupied by an enemy leader. There's no cost in movement points to the moving legion or army if this happens, and there's no movement point cost to the withdrawing legions to do so. The player who wants to withdraw has to withdraw all of his legions in the province or none at all. It's not possible to withdraw part of the legions. Withdrawal, however, may be cancelled by the play of bad weather. You place a withdrawn marker on these guys again. I didn't know this rule was here, honestly. I was beginning to think, I wonder if we're going to see that. On top of the withdrawing legions, legions with a withdrawal marker may not move when it's their next player round until they've removed the marker. They may always withdraw or retreat if they lose a battle. But right now that withdrawn marker has 2 on it. And that's going to be important because that's the cost. The moving legion or army may continue movement if it has movement points remaining. So here's the thing. If I move into an area where the enemy is, the enemy has an option to withdraw. But am I going to have to pay more? I don't know. That feels a little fuzzy, but it feels to me like if they withdraw, I would be exempted from having to pay or get permission from them to keep moving. Removing a withdrawn marker during a player round. It costs 2 movement points to remove a withdrawn marker from all the legions in one province, making those legions eligible to move again. Withdrawn markers may be so removed during the player's round. Doesn't spell out, this isn't exactly movement, whether or not I can spend movement points to pull a withdrawal marker off and go to another province and deal with that province for actual movement. I doubt it, but again, removing withdrawal markers at the end of a game turn. In any case, all of them are removed automatically at no cost at the end of every game turn. We get an example, maybe, which is occupied by a legion of Toms. Tom decides to withdraw to Syria, which is occupied by 2 more. A withdrawn marker is placed on top of the withdrawn legion. So this leaves Syria unoccupied, and there is no extra movement point cost for Frank. That covers one of the ambiguities that I really wasn't too bothered with. However, if he wishes to continue moving into Asia Minor, he will find that province now occupied by 3 enemy legions that may not be so amenable at this time. Doesn't cover the cost of removing the withdrawal and trying to deal with another province. Again, I don't think that's the case. Withdrawal can be a way of increasing the size of your army in a given province, even if it's not your player round. Non-moving players in withdrawal. In all of the above cases, if there are legions or armies of more than 1 player in a province that is being entered by a 3rd or 4th player, each non-moving player must decide separately what to do with his legions, done in clockwise around the table from the moving player. I believe that decision is made before the moving player makes decisions on attacking and whatnot, and we'll see why. Different players may never combine legions or armies for any purpose. Not put under any number or anything, put in bold, just this random thing, because we decided to have case numbers in the rules and whatnot, but not to worry about them too much. They are used as references, at least. But yeah, this... Moving leaders. Leaders do not pay any movement points if they move along with a legion or army. However, if they move alone, they pay 1 movement point per province. They are not subject to battle fatigue, but they do pay extra movement points to pick up legions as they move. They may not move through an enemy-occupied province unless they have the latter's permission. They may not be picked up. However, they may be dropped off. Rome is a city, not a province, although for movement point purposes, it is treated as a province. It's not part of any area. It's adjacent to both the southern and northern Italian provinces, which are also not part of any area. Only leaders may enter Rome. It may be entered only from the 2 Italian provinces. The player may not use a galley fleet event to move directly to Rome. It is not a port, although it's surrounded by ports. More than 1 leader may be in Rome at the same time. Okay, plain note, an emperor who is in Rome cannot be defeated in battle, which is always a possibility when he is outside Rome with at least one of his legions. However, while he is in Rome, he's subject to assassination. Emperors who are alone outside Rome cannot be attacked. Boy, does this feel weird. We'll get to that. All right. How far are we? Yeah. Okay. Before, during, or after moving a legion or army may attack any enemy legion or army in the same province. If there are legions or armies of more than 1 opposing player present, he must attack them separately. He can attack some and not others. The choice is his. During a player round, the same legion or army may only be attacked once in the same province. The attack is a part of movement. You have to play a card for movement purposes before you're allowed to initiate a battle. It costs a legion or army 1 movement point in addition to the cost to move into that province to attack. I think we got another contradiction here. Not positive. The cost of every battle after the first will increase by 1. The cost of picking up other legions remains unchanged. Example, an army that has fought and won 2 battles would, if it wanted to continue to move and fight, pay 3 movement points to enter an adjacent province. 1 normal movement point plus 2 battle fatigue movement points. It's not paying anything for its combat. Or 3 movement points to attack another enemy in the same province. There it's paying for the combat. Here, legions or armies may make more than 1 attack in a single player round, paying 1 movement point for each such attack plus the extra battle fatigue cost as long as they have enough movement points remaining. It sounds like in one place in the rules you get that attack for free, and here you have to pay for the attack all the time, although it's a little weird because legions and armies may make more than 1 attack in a single player round. Which almost sounds, neither one, I mean, the two do not, they're mutually exclusive. They contradict one another. There's no question of that. The question is what the contradiction is. Is it the paying 1 movement point for all attacks in this rule? Is that a contradiction? Or is it that I'm paying an extra movement point for only the second and later attacks? And then also I have the battle fatigue to add to that. Damned if I know. Once a player has announced that he's going to attack an enemy legion or army, that legion or army may not withdraw. It may... Timing issues here. I'm attacking you! Wait, I wanted to withdraw. Too bad. Yes, there are games that have those. Pax Britannica comes to mind, and they basically break the game in Pax Britannica. I've seen many games of Pax Britannica go perfectly fine, but if you follow the rules explicitly, the entire game should come to an absolute halt because nobody would do anything because of timing issues. And I happened to be playing. One of my buddies realized that and started taking advantage of it. And I'm like, well, if you're doing it, I'm doing it too. We're just going to stand here, and neither of us is doing anything, and the game's never going to end. Therefore, I had to introduce some kind of timing rule to prevent that. And the timing rule was basically, if you went a certain amount of time without anybody doing anything, the turn was just over. But then what that meant was, somebody would start the stopwatch on that, and we'd both be standing there, and then we'd both do something in the last 5 seconds or whatever. And it was just pathetic. Right. You can tell I'm treating this game very seriously. Battle points. Attacks are resolved by comparing battle points. An army gets battle points for the following. 1 for each legion present, +2 if the legion's led by an emperor, +1 if it's led by a contender. Now, at the beginning, you start with a general, neither an emperor nor a contender. Plus battle points, including for any cards that are played for battle purposes. Now, remember, the active player is only allowed to play 4 cards total during their turn. Using cards for battle. When a card is played for battle purposes, that player gains battle points listed on that card. You do not have to play cards for battle purposes. The attacker may play as many as they like within their 4-card limit. The defender may play up to 3 cards for battle purposes. And he can do that against every legitimate attack made against his units. After a battle has been resolved, all cards played for the battle purposes go into the discard box. They're selected secretly and revealed simultaneously. Each player totals his battle points. The high total wins the battle. The winner takes one of the loser's legions and puts it in his army, replacing the colors. If that army has any movement points remaining, it may continue to move and or attack, subject to increased battle fatigue movement points. The newly added legion from the loser is considered to belong to the winning army and may move and fight as part of it. The loser loses that legion and either stays in place or retreats. An emperor or contender that loses a battle is no longer the emperor or contender. You replace his emperor or contender piece with his general piece. The legions or armies of both sides stay where they are. The attacking legion or army must stop movement and may not attack. On a draw. The legions or armies of both sides stay where they are. The attacking legion or army must stop movement and may not attack again in this play round. The emperor contender status of any leaders is retained if, after a leader is removed, a legion is removed. A leader is alone in a province. Now, this is weird because this is like part of draw, but it shouldn't be. It's completely separate. If after it only happens if there's a winner and a loser. If after a legion is removed, a leader is alone in a province, he stays there. One cannot attack or eliminate a lone leader piece. A retreat is undertaken in the same way as a withdrawal. However, no legion or army may use naval passage for retreat. Place a withdrawn marker on top of the losing legion or army. But this is at your option, as far as I can tell. It says the loser either stays in place or retreats. Okay. There are always 28 legions on the game board, either uncontrolled or controlled by players. Ownership of a legion can change during the play round. Now we have a whole battle example. I really don't feel like there's any real big questions sitting here that are likely to be answered there, so I'm not going to even read it. Becoming the Emperor. Becoming the Emperor provides a player with victory points and increased battle capacity. The game starts without emperors. Historically, the Senate declared for Otho and made him emperor. And he had, some small amount of troops. And Italy. A player may attempt to become emperor at any time during his own play round. There are 3 ways to become emperor. 2 are by declaration. The third is by winning a battle from a legion or army personally led by an emperor. An emperor, not the emperor. Becoming emperor by declaration in Rome. If there are no emperors in play, a player may become emperor by having his general declared emperor at any time during his play round. To do so, the general must be in Rome at the time and must have at least 5 declaration points. You get declaration points for a legion superiority. 1 DP for each legion a player has in Italy, north or south, above the total of all other combined legions in Italy. And they give an example of how to compare two numbers. Area control. You get 2 DPs for each area on the game board that you control. Each player starts out controlling one area, their home area. 3 DPs for card play. What the fuck? Oh, this is an example. Okay, card play. Senate influence, you get 1 DP for each Senate influence event you play. They look like this. Looks like somebody sheared a bunch of sheep. Support for Praetorian Guard. You get 1 DP for each Praetorian Guard event you play. Now, the Senate influence, hold on, I forgot this. This can be negated by the play of a bribe. Okay, let's take a look. Praetorian Guard looks like this. Looks like 2 people hugging or something. I mean, I really can't see it very well. And the bribe looks like a bunch of money. Okay, that one makes sense. Okay. Then we get an example for how somebody gets their DPs. Becoming emperor by legion declaration. This is a 2-step process in which a player's general becomes a contender, after which the contender becomes emperor by starting one of his player rounds in Rome. The first step is to play the Ave Caesar event. Looks like some shields under a dude. Boop, 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 boop. Under the following circumstances, all of which must be met, otherwise the event can't take place. The general and at least one of his own legion is in a province that is that player's base of operations, his starting area. The player controls his base of operations, his entire starting area. Uh-oh, battery's dead. Hey, this one looks all juiced up now. Sweet. I don't think we're going to get through the whole thing, though. I think we'll probably stop here, but let's get through the Emperor. Well, we may actually stop here and then go to the events and discuss each of them individually. Okay, where were we? You're in a province in your base of operations, and you control your base of operations. They give an example. Frank started the game with Central Europe as his base of operations. His general is now in Germania Superior with one of his legions. He is eligible for this element of legion declaration. That, for this element, the element being he's with his legion in his base of operations. Not this element, the one that has the example. And then you must also control the area that the province is in. Well, the province is your base of operations, and you have to control that already. Feels like they fucked something up there, and maybe what they mean is you must control the province and you must control the area that it's in, but I don't know. As it stands, you don't actually have to control the province to become a contender. The second step is then, so you need these 3 conditions to declare yourself, and you need an Ave Caesar to declare yourself a contender through your legions. The second step is legitimacy. You replace your general with your contender. That doesn't feel like the second step. Yeah, so the first step is the Ave Caesar. The second step is you swap the pieces. It is the effect. Anyway. Okay. Now to become emperor, the contender must start one of his own future player rounds in Rome. If he does so and there's only one or no emperor in play, he becomes emperor. Replace the contender with the emperor. But you could go conquer Rome and you would not become emperor if there was two emperors in play already. It's all very interesting. I'm not quite sure how this relates in terms of like, I'm trying to picture the history at the time period, whether or not there was ever a time when there were three people claiming to be emperor at the same time. I don't think so, but I'm struggling with it. And you know, Imperium Romanum, a game which covers this in a lot more detail, and not just this, doesn't really distinguish like the concept of becoming the emperor, of being declared for as emperor. It feels almost like the game kind of just assumes that everybody has been declared for in this scenario, and Otho is sitting there as someone who has some legitimacy because the Senate has declared him emperor. I think at the instigation of the Praetorians, though. And I'm not sure at what point any other people... So people generally didn't declare themselves emperor until they controlled Rome, which kind of fits this. I'm just trying to kind of... Because that game doesn't even address these concepts, I think it's kind of interesting that this does. And some of me says maybe something interesting can be done with some of the mechanisms of this, especially to create a framing around, say, a series of scenarios for, although this covers so little time-wise that I don't know if it would work as a framing. The game that I think would work as a decent framing with some effort is History of the Roman Empire. I'm wondering if something can be done with that and Imperium Romanum. If only Imperium Romanum gave an accurate operational game on, like, you know, the combat consideration, the military considerations. But unfortunately it doesn't. Lots of history and effort was put into designing all these scenarios in Imperium Romanum, but it just does not play out like the Civil Wars and whatnot did in a lot of ways. So, you know, I've heard people say, oh, it's more of a simulation than a game. Honestly, and I've said this many times, I've had a shitload of fun playing it multiplayer as a game. But as a simulation, it just falls apart so badly. So I take the exact opposite stance on that game. This game, well, we know it doesn't work as a simulation at all. The question is there an interesting game here? And I'm guessing there isn't, but we shall see. We shall see. It's very poorly rated, but some of that may be a combination of ambiguous and problematic rules, along with being just so historically bullshit. All right. Where are we here? Okay. The third way of becoming emperor. So what was the first? The first was being in Rome with a general, right? Yeah, they say general. I would say a contender should... Well, a contender would automatically do it. Being a general allows you to do it if you're able to collect enough of these declaration points, legitimacy points, whatever. This one, you're going from your own power base and utilizing that along with an event card to give you the right to march on Rome and be declared emperor. The final way is if a legion or army led by its emperor loses in battle to an opposing legion or army with a leader, the former not only reverts to general status, but the victorious general or contender is now an emperor. Technically, somebody who was declared as emperor, not just in rebellion, but somebody who was declared as emperor, would have to be killed. You wouldn't just, yeah, you're a general now. But okay, abstracted away, whatever, family, other faction members, whatever. But, yeah, there's something weird here, because remember, if your emperor is on his own, he can't be defeated. He's on his own and he's not in Rome. Okay, advantages of being emperor. The player who is an emperor gains the following. Emperor-led legions and armies gain 2 extra battle points. This is for the total force, not per individual legion. Yeah, I would hope so. Contender-led legions and armies. This is for some reason under advantages of being emperor. Just thrown in there. Contender-led legions and armies gain 1 extra battle point. You'd think this would be in the battle rules, perhaps as well, but emperors gain victory points during scoring. Okay, that's it. Let's keep going with emperors, and then I will put this aside for a little bit to get a rest. An emperor can lose his position and be demoted to general by losing a battle or by assassination. An emperor may be eliminated by assassination. Assassinations may be attempted only against an emperor who is in Rome. You may not attempt to assassinate a contender or a general. To attempt an assassination, a player plays an assassin they look like, I don't know, a helmet or something. I don't know, some kind of piece of broken metal. Maybe these will be more, and I was going to say, maybe these will make more sense when I look at them, but no. Like, what the hell is that? And so I flip through here and see, is that rebellious legions? No. Is that a German tribe? That's German tribes attack. Okay. Great. The artwork is not very evocative of what, I mean, you know, I see that there's something going on, but I see a horse and whatever, I don't know. I got no idea. All right, where are we? To attempt an assassination, a player plays an assassin, and if there are 2 emperors in Rome, now try to imagine this. There's 2 people who have been declared emperor, both in Rome at the same time, a place where you're actually not even allowed to bring your troops. And to some extent, that was actually still being followed at times. Like, which is why the Praetorians were so potent, because the emperor wasn't allowed to have his own forces there. So if he didn't have the support of the Praetorians, they could just kill him. Supposedly. To attempt an assassination, you play an assassin. If there are 2 emperors in Rome, names the target of the event. Now, there can never be more than 2 emperors, as far as I can tell, but he may also play, along with that card, as many Praetorian Guard and bribe events as he wishes, within his 4-card per round maximum. It's highly suggested to play as many Praetorian Guard and bribe events as you can, if you wish to have a good chance of success. Now, yeah, so these cards have multiple uses. Once the assassination has been announced, each player may try to stop it, starting clockwise with the moving player, the one who's trying the assassination. The other players cannot play events to support the attempt. A player stops the assassination by playing a Praetorian Guard against the attempt if there is no Praetorian Guard protecting the attempt. Okay, so you'd better throw a Praetorian Guard out. A protecting Praetorian Guard may first be removed by playing either a Praetorian Guard against it, both cards are then removed, or 2 bribes against it, all 3 cards are discarded. The 2 bribes may be played by different players. The 2 bribes remove 1 protecting Praetorian Guard. Bribe, however, cannot stop the attempt per se. 2 bribes just remove a Praetorian Guard. Okay. Why am I allowed to play bribes for defense? No. Defenses is just Praetorian Guards. Yeah. Gotcha. Wait, does that make sense? A player stops the assassination by playing a Praetorian Guard. Okay, so what's going on here? Once the assassination... No. We go up here. It is highly suggested to play as many Praetorian Guard and bribe events as you can if you wish to have a good chance of success. That's indicating that the person attacking is playing bribes. But we come here, a player stopping the assassination plays a Praetorian Guard against it. If there's none there, a protecting Praetorian Guard may first be removed by playing either. Yeah. So the attacker is the one who plays the Praetorian Guards and the bribes. But here it says the two bribes may be played by different players, which I don't believe. The other players cannot play events to support the attempt. So this just doesn't work. Like, it just doesn't work. If after all the players have had a chance to block the assassin event, it's still in effect, the attempt is successful. So see here, the bribes remove a protecting Praetorian Guard. I think the attacker is allowed to throw down some bribes, which will cancel out some Praetorian Guards. But I really don't know what they're trying to say here. It just doesn't work the way it's described at all. Do we have an example of this? No! This is confusing and could easily be misinterpreted because there's like 4 or 5 different ways you can try to read this. And so, of course, let's not put an example for this. Let's put one on how you count. Okay. If after all players have had a chance to block the assassin, it's still in effect, the attempt is successful. The Emperor piece is replaced with the corresponding general piece. So, death in this game means you get demoted to a general. You're being replaced by a successor or whatever, but whatever. Note, a bad augury has no effect on any events during an assassination attempt. Well, that's good to know. I'm glad the auguries don't matter. Auguries are, I believe, a way to cancel events. It negates an event played immediately with certain exceptions. And this is the first time it's been mentioned. Other events that have been mentioned can not be canceled by it. Notably, I just saw here, it does not negate the Ave Caesar or any event played as part of an assassination attempt. Great. Obviously, most attempts to stop the assassin will be by the Emperor's player. However, that's not always the case. Let's talk about multiple emperors, and then we'll take a break. There may never be more than 2 emperors in play at any one time. If there are 2 emperors in play, your legions may not declare you emperor. They're not allowed to anyway. They kind of do. I mean, they sort of do, but okay, whatever. Even if you fulfill the necessary conditions, you may become a contender, but you have to wait to become emperor until one of the 2 emperors loses his position. If there are 2 emperors, when it becomes time to determine victory points, they divide the victory points between them. I'll put this here, because I do want to go through the cards, and I probably have enough juice left. Yeah, I have enough juice left to do this. Okay, to control a province, you must have more legions therein than all the other legions combined. And that includes non-controlled. Place a control marker on that player's color in the province to indicate control. If there are not any legions or any other if there are not any legions or other uncontrolled legions in a province, no one controls it. Okay, look. I'm not going to put control markers everywhere. They're going to confuse the shit out of the world. So I'm just not going to fucking use these. It should be pretty obvious who controls a province. How about areas? To control an area, you must control at least 3 of the provinces in that area. Place a control marker in the appropriate area box on the game board to indicate who owns it. So I only need 1 of each of these. And then we have an example, and I don't need to go over that. The rules are bad enough, you can see why people just kind of like looked at it and said, this doesn't work, and pushed it aside. I think I can get something playable out of it. You know, I don't think they're so bad that they're unsalvageable. The question is, how does the game play out, and who cares, right? But we shall see. There was something else I wanted to say. Yeah, I don't know. All right. We'll hit the cards, which is basically a replication of this, and how you win the game when I come back down. Kind of would rather just hit how you win the game. I don't have much battery left. Let me swap batteries again, and I'll come back to it. This one's all jizzed up too. Winning the game. Let's do this, then I'll look at the cards, and then maybe I can just load it up. Automatic victory. At the end of any game turn, one player controls all 4 areas or is emperor and controls 3 of the areas. They win the game. Bang, bang. Victory point win. If no one gets an automatic victory, you play to the end of the game. And whoever has the most victory points at that point wins the game. Each time a player wins an emperor-led battle, he gains a victory point. The only way you get victory points in battle, you're the emperor and you beat someone. Now remember, you have an advantage. You have 2 extra strength points. In addition, the players accumulate victory points at the end of each game turn. They're recorded with those markers. At the end of the first 3 game turns, you get 5 if you're the emperor, or 2 if there are 2 emperors. You get +2 if your emperor is in Rome. Even if you're both there, you each get +2 for that. You get 2 victory points for each full area that you control. It doesn't say full, and 1 victory point for each province in Italy you control. You have the most legions there. Actually, yeah, no. You have more legions than all other combined. You have the majority of legions there. At the end of the 4th game turn, you get points that are very similar. It's 8 for emperor or 4 for a pair of emperors each. +2 for Rome, for emperor in Rome, same. 3 victory points per area controlled, and 1 for each province in Italy you control. So the victory points escalate a little bit in that last turn, which makes sense. I'm kind of iffy on that you would get, intermediate victory points, but hey, whatever. I always feel like there's something funky about, well, I had a glorious, mid-game, and that gave me the win. Yeah, but you're dead now. It's someone else's emperor. Okay, let's take a look at the different cards, since I do have a reasonable amount of juice here. Using cards as events, most cards are played for event purposes during a player's player round. Some, as noted below, can be played at any point during the game when they are deemed useful. Cards that have a once symbol. A once symbol. Is that this? I don't know what a once symbol is. A once symbol is this number here. It's got a 1 on it. And it's a Roman 1. Or a Sumerian 1. Indicate that the particular event may be played only once per player round. This applies to all players, not just the player whose round it is. Thus, a player holding 3 traitor cards may play only 1 traitor per event round, per player round. Play note: it's best to place cards that say once face up near the game board after playing them. This makes it easier to make sure nobody else plays the same card. Play of a card as an event is subject to the 4-card maximum. There's no limits to how many cards can be played by non-moving players, however, except in the one condition, the battle cards, you're only allowed to play 3, but that's not events. If more than one player wants to play a card that negates another card just played, the player to the left of the player playing the card to be negated may do so first. A person with pebbles in his pits must play. What events do is noted below and on the player aid card. Assassin. This event is used to attempt an assassination of an emperor. Must be played in your player round. Probably should say may only be played, but whatever. Bad augury. Once. When played, this event negates the effect of the event played immediately before, but it does not negate an Ave Caesar, nor anything to do with an assassination can be played as needed. Bad weather, once, may be used to stop movement and therefore an attack or withdrawal of any one legion or army. The event has no effect on moving leaders or retreats after battle. The target legion army may move no further the instant this event is played and is finished for that player round and may prevent any intended movement of a legion or army. This event may be played immediately before this one. Both the bad weather event and the negated card are put in the discard box, may be played at any time as needed. The target legion. This event, what is this? May prevent any intended movement immediately. This event may be played immediately before this one. Okay. That sentence makes no sense. It is a nonsense. To wrestle with my battery charger for a bit. I don't know what that card is meant here, but they say both the bad weather event and the negated card are put in. It may be that it's intended to be able to prevent galley movement, or whatever it is, and they just didn't put the words in that belonged there. And that may mean that maybe it's different here. No. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. But I'm assuming that because it can stop movement or withdrawal. Okay, bribe. This event is used to negate the effect of another played immediately before. A bribe may be played to either negate the use of a Senate influence card when declaring for Emperor in Rome, or negate a Praetorian Guard event used as protection by a player in his assassination attempt, but you need to play 2 bribe events to negate or remove 1 Praetorian Guard. Both the bribe events and the negated event are put in the discard box. I think both sides can play bribe events. I get the feeling that the person launching the assassination can play them in response to a Praetorian Guard the way this is written, because it negates the effect of one played immediately before, as opposed to the way the rules said back here, which seemed to imply that you threw bribes down. It is highly suggested to play as many Praetorian Guard and bribes. Where is this? A player plays an assassin. He may also play along with that card as many Praetorian Guard and bribe events as he wishes. I don't think you have to play the bribes to begin the situation. I think you do have to play the Praetorian Guards to begin the situation. And in fact, however many Praetorian Guards you put down, if those get canceled out, there's an issue. But we shall see. Okay. Poor health. This event is played against the opposing player's general or contender, but not an emperor. That general or contender may not move any more that player round. It may prevent any movement of a general or contender. This event may be played against a galley fleet event of another player. This is what I think belongs in the bad weather. Legions that are in the same province as the general or contender are free to move. The event is similar to bad weather, but applies to the general contender piece only. Both the poor health and the negated card are put into the discard box. May be played at any time. I think something was just cut out of there, and it's very similar to this, or it is that. Crisis in Rome. I don't know what that looks like. It looks like a dude sitting, maybe. The pictures are just not very clear, and they're less clear on the player aid. The emperor, if there is one, is immediately placed in Rome. If there are 2 emperors, the one that moves to Rome is chosen by the player playing the event. Simply pick up the emperor and place him in Rome. Great. Galley fleet. When played, this event allows the player to move up to 3 of his legions, plus leader, that start the player round in any one port province to any other port province on the game board, as that army's move for the player round. The army may not move or attack upon landing. This event may be negated by bad weather, legions, bad augury, or poor health event. Now this is really weird. The poor health event will negate the entire galley fleet card. Presumably if they have a general with them. Now, can you only move with a general? This is one of the questions that comes up here. Because, for example, here they say thing may move up to 3 legions plus leader, right? The way that plus leader is in there, it's kind of ambiguous. Again, does it just mean you can throw your leader in with the forces or not? Well, when we look at moving, may move from 1 to 4 cards to move his legions and his leader. See 5.7. Leaders on their own don't pay movement points when they move along with a legion or army. However, if they move alone, they pay. I don't know. I'm really not sure. Can you only move your stack with your leader? Well, that seems impossible because there's these rules about splitting that seem to imply that you can split and move multiple stacks of units out of a single province. So that can't be the case, but for some reason, a galley fleet is prevented by poor health. Now, what's not clear is whether or not there has to be a leader present for that to happen. Because if we look at the poor health, this is played against an opposing player's general or contender. They may not move anymore. The event may be played against a galley fleet event of another player. Yeah, I really don't know. And it says here both the poor health and the negated card. Well, the card's not actually negated necessarily, right? Fuck me. I'm out of battery. We're supposedly fully charged. We're not, because it was red, but still, it's a good sign. All right, and as you can see, this game's rules are just a total fucking shit show. German tribes attack. The player playing this event designates which one province in Germania is affected by the attack, either superior or inferior. All legions and leader pieces in that province are immediately moved to any adjacent province, regardless of who controls that province. A legion is moved to an adjacent province at his discretion by the player owning it. A player has to move all his legions and leader into one province. Uncontrolled legions are moved by the player playing the event. Place the German tribe marker. I bet you that's this. Look at that. How about that? It does have a rule. In that province. It now costs 3 movement points to enter. The selected province is no longer controlled by any player until the German tribe marker is removed. Any legion that starts its player round in that province may, not must, remove the German tribe marker at no cost. It must be played in your player round. Okay. In terms of historical accuracy, look, these were never controlled by Rome, ever. Did Rome ever incur into them? Sure, but not for long. And you know, yeah. Ave Caesar. You may announce yourself contender and replace your general with the contender if the requirements are met. So there's only one emperor already in play, or none. Your contender with at least 1 legion is in a province in your base of operations. You control your base of operations. What was the problem with that before? Province in your base of operations. You control your base of operations. You control the area the province is in. It's already covered. Okay. Okay. Rebellious Legion. These can be done once per player turn. The player playing this event may take 1 legion of any player out of the game and place an uncontrolled legion piece in its place. That legion is now uncontrolled. You can only play this in your own player round. Praetorian Guard. The Emperor's personal bodyguard. This event may be used for any one of three purposes: as protection in an assassination attempt, to negate the effect of a Praetorian Guard protecting an assassination event, to provide a general with one declaration point when declaring for emperor in Rome. So this is kind of weird. Because again, go back to the assassination. Once the assassination has been announced, each player must stop it. If after all players have had a chance to block the assassin, it's still in effect. Yeah, I get the feeling that the Praetorians can also be held off and used by the assassin to play this. So to attempt an assassination, a player plays an assassin, and if there are two emperors in Rome, names the target. He may also play, along with this card, as many Praetorian Guard and bribes as he wishes, but again, it feels like the timing is just left not well defined. Like, part of it seems to indicate that he has to put them out first. Other parts seem to indicate that there's a response nature to these cards. Right. I don't know. Revolting Province. The card designates which province: Judea, Britannia, Germania, Superior, or Achaia. So Germania has two problems. They have a revolt and they have the German tribes. Is in revolt. The player whose base of operations includes that province must immediately pick up two of his legions, place up to two of his legions in that province, so as to bring the total number of legions, regardless of whose legions they are, in that province to 2. The player whose base of operations includes that province must immediately place up to 2 of his legions. 0 is up to 2, right? So to bring the total number of legions in that province to 2. Okay. Exactly 2. If there are already 2 or more legions there, he does not have to move any. But is he allowed to? Because here it says the total, so as to bring the total number of legions to 2. And what if there are 3? I can't bring it to 2. But am I allowed to move them? He does not have to move any. Again, so many, like, there's no way to parse this that works. But all legions now in that province become uncontrolled. Well, definitely don't want to move any then, so I guess that's easy enough. If you have to move legions to that province, simply pick up any of your legions from anywhere on the game board and place them in that province in question. Must be played in your player round. There are only 4 uncontrolled legions. It is easily conceivable that you would need more than 4. There's no rules that I know of for dealing with that. So I don't know. Senate influence. When played, this event provides the player with 1 DP when declaring the for emperor. We won't go into that. The event may be negated by a bribe. Must be played in your player round. Traitor. This allows the player to take, randomly and blindly, any 1 card from another player's hand and place it in his own. He may use the drawn card immediately, but remember, this is going to cost you 1 of your 4 actions. But here's what's powerful about it. Normally, if you want to discard a card in order to pass, you lose a card. Here, at least I get a replacement, and it may be a better replacement if I want to pass. Okay, we already talked about how you win. I think we've talked about everything. We're going to try to play this. I don't see that it's going to be problematic. I mean, except insofar as I may change what the rules are as I'm going, because I read them one way one time and another way another. But it feels like there's probably a playable game here. I don't know what value there is to it, though. It's certainly not got any historical worth, right? And, oh, I forgot to go into the, I meant to hit this, and I couldn't find it, where they talk about the colors of the pieces. The colors of the playing pieces correspond with the colors of the areas of the game board. Okay, look. I'm not sure what this is, because this looks kind of yellow. This looks more yellow. This looks kind of orangish. This looks kind of orangish too. Okay, we'll keep going. The only exception is blue. Okay, there's no blue area. I'm the boat people. Fair. The blue color belongs to the orange area. All right, this is what I would call orange. I'm a little iffy because there seem to be two yellows, but okay. This was done to achieve a better contrast between the playing pieces and the game board. What the hell? It's like you're trying to avoid contrast with like everywhere else you're trying to match the color. What the fuck are you talking about, dude? I have no idea. I think it was just a horrible, horrible choice. I guess... I mean, they can't use blue as an area because the map is blue. This or the map contains blue for water. So making blue areas would probably feel kind of funky to them. Okay. They wanted to go with primary colors, so they get red, yellow, green, and blue. What could they have used instead? That's a good question. Purple is obviously a color one might think of, but they've used purple for the Empire. But it's just like, I don't know which is the orange area. I know it's not this because here they show a picture of the orangish red pieces in the orangish red territory. So that's not orange. These pieces look more orange than yellow. This looks more yellow. This looks, I don't know what. But it actually just doesn't matter. So fuck it. This is what I went with. And that's about it. We'll load this up, I guess. I wanted to give an example. This card got a little nick on it. I was opening the pack and, you know, my thumbnail or whatever did that. These are also beginning to chip up as well. So just as a